we're going to look at how to manipulate phone numbers. And there's a lot of scenarios that involve manipulation of phone numbers. We're going to start off with one where you might have a listing of numbers that you want to change, say, periods to hyphens. So for example, I might have these numbers here, and it might be something like this. And there might be a few of these, so I'm going to just drag this down to about 5. And we're going to work with this set. What we want to do is replace these periods with hyphens. So I'm going to start off with a formula, and we can use the substitute. And the substitute has a few parameters here, and we'll just go through them. Starting off with text, it's wondering what cell do you want to manipulate. So we're going to start with A1, which you can see is now highlighted. Then it's saying what text do you want to replace. I want to replace periods. And then what text do you want to replace with? I'm going to go with hyphens. And then I can tab out of this, and you can see here we get the change. And I can just drag this down so that it manipulates all the other cells, and there we have our change. If I wanted to do something different, if I wanted this to be maybe nothing, I just wanted the entire number, then I could do this. And that would be the entire number, and I can double click down here in the corner, and that will apply to all of that data there. So let's try something a little bit different. Let's say we have a mixture. So maybe we've got a dot, we've got our prefix here, and then we've got hyphen actually, and it looks like that. So if I create a few of these here, just drag this down, and now I need to replace this mixture. So what I can do is substitute again, and the text is going to be this A7, and the text I want to replace, I want to replace the period, and we're going to go for just a solid number. So I'm not going to replace with anything. We're just going to use the empty string. I need a comma here. So the new text to replace the period is the empty string. Let's just try this. And you can see what's happening there. We're getting that result, and that's fine. Now we need to work on this dash. So what we have here is a result. And out of that result, the only thing left to do is replace that dash. So we're going to take that result and put it in a substitute. And now the first part is, what text do you want to work on? We're going to work on our result that we just had. And then the text that we're replacing, well, there was a hyphen. So we're going to replace that hyphen. And again, we're not going to use anything to replace it with because we want just a number. And that's what happens. And then I can, of course, drag this down and apply it to all my data. So you might find that a little confusing when you look at this formula. We've got substitute inside of substitute. All that happened here was we got a result, which was a number with just a hyphen in it. So the next thing to do is replace the hyphen with nothing, which is what we did with our next substitute. And when you start getting formulas and they're wrapping like that, it can get confusing to work with and even understand what they're doing. So one way to get around that, I'm going to copy our formula and paste it over here. And I'm going to change this B7 to an A7 so we get the same result. I'll widen this a little bit. Okay, so what I was saying earlier is we can shed some of these outer formulas. So the way this would have worked, we would have just started with this one, right? And we still have the hyphen. So that can be like a step 1. If I add some kind of header column, just insert a row, and I'll do step 1 of our formula, then I'll do step 2 of our formula. Make a little bit of room here. And step 2 is going to manipulate the result. So this is a substitute, and we're going to work on this. And in there, we want to remove the hyphen, replace it with nothing. So that makes it a little bit easier to understand. You can see this right here is the same as this. And if I want to divide this a little bit more, I can maybe just put something here like color that solid. Maybe I'll just do a light gray like that, just to show that these are steps and this contains the entire formula in one thing. So let's say we got a different kind of number. We got something like above where we have area code prefix and then our final identifying digits. But they gave us a number that had 1. So it might look like 1206, and it had a period, and it had this, then it had a hyphen. So that doesn't look too friendly. We have a lot going on, and what we want to do, the end result, is to create just regular numbers like we've been doing here. So if we look at this, it's going to be similar to this one. It's going to be similar to this formula where we have a substitute, then we wrap that substitute result in another substitute. But we also have to manipulate this 1. So let's start doing what we know how to do here. We'll go with substitute, and the number we're working with is this one. We're going to replace the period with nothing. So let's see what happens here. So far, so good. Now we're going to work on this result and remove the hyphen. So we're just taking this one at a time. And then I'm going to say the text to replace with is the hyphen and not replace it with anything. So now we should have a solid number, which we do. We have to replace this 1 now. So all of this is a result. And we're going to wrap that result so we can begin manipulating against it. So we could go ahead and just wrap this in another formula and keep working, but you can see we've got 3 functions in here. Well, we will have 3. We've got 2. We've got 2 substitutes. Then we're going to add another. That's 3. So we might just move over here and use our steps. But I'm going to just use a replace and work off of this result. Then we can break it down a little bit more, but I just want to show you. So if I click this, that's the text that I'm working on. And the substitute and the replace are similar in that way. So what I want to replace is this first 1. So it's saying, what's the starting number that you're going to be replacing? I'm going to say the first character, which is a 1. How many characters do I want to replace? Just 1, because we're replacing that 1. What character do you want to replace that 1 with? Nothing. I just want to get rid of it. So now if I tab out, you can see here we've got a nice format and our 1 is gone. So if we go back over here and we do the same thing, so it's saying, what's your old text? The old text is going to be both substitutes. And then I'll put a comma. Now what's your starting character? It's going to be the 1. It's going to be the first character because we want to remove that 1. How many characters starting at the first character do you want to remove? Just 1 character. And then what text are you replacing with finally? Nothing. Nothing. Don't replace it with anything. And so you can see here we get the result we're looking for, a solid number. And of course this one changed because it's manipulating off of this result, which is different than what it had earlier. So I can delete that, and we have 3 steps now. So I'll break that down here. And we're going to go ahead and start with our first substitute, which begins with the period. So we're working on this number or this cell here, and we're replacing periods with nothing. What does that look like? So far, so good. Give us a little bit more room. And over here, I'm going to do another substitute, because now we're replacing this hyphen. So we're working off of this number. That's my text right here, comma. What's the text you want to replace? The hyphen. And what's the new text? Nothing. So far, so good. And then we're going to apply our final part of this build up, which is the replace. And what are we working on? This here. And where are we starting? We're starting the first character. How many characters? 1. And what are we replacing with? Nothing. And there we go. So that's how you can do these stepwise, or just if you're able to do it all in one place. But it will get complicated as you begin growing these things out and wrapping more and more. So that's why it's good to know how to just use these and break them out in steps. So another thing you might want to do is just format cells in your spreadsheet so that when someone types into a cell, it's already kind of pre-formatted for them in a phone number format. So this is not anything we're taking existing data and we're manipulating. We're actually allowing someone to input new data, and as they input, it builds this mask around that data. So this may work good when you have a spreadsheet that you're giving to a client or to coworkers that's nicely formatted in different colors, and there's a field in there where they have to enter a phone number. Now what you can do in that case, and let's see, I'll just say phone number, and below here is where we're going to enter a phone number. And what I want to do is change this to yellow, and they're going to enter a phone number here. I right click on this cell, go to Format Cells, and choose Special, then Phone Number, and click OK. So it looks like nothing's happening here, but I'll go ahead and type in a phone number. Just use one of these above. And then I tab out, and you can see here the mask is applied. So that's very useful for those kinds of fields where you're taking input from someone. What about a scenario where you want to add an area code to phone numbers? So let's say you get some numbers that look something like this. If I drag these down, there's a few of them. Okay, and then over here we want to do a 202 area code. So what I can do in this case is I have 202. I do ampersand, and I do this cell. If I tab out of that, you can see what I get here, this 202. But I actually want the 202 in parentheses, and I want a space after the parentheses. So if I go back in here, and I do this, put a parenthesis around it, and then I put a space, we get that look. I'll make this a little bit wider, and then I can just drag this down and apply that to all of my other numbers.